Had a snafu with my export, and none of my lineups went in. Fortunately, my placeholder lineups did not have any injured players or players who were sitting on the early game, but I did miss out on Memphis value. And as I told you, with about 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, I can't wait for this game to go into overtime. And sure as shit, it did.
Yeah, yep, definitely did. Um, yeah, last night was okay for me. Lost a little bit, got 10th in the big, like 15 on DraftKings, but not enough to make back. Other what I lost on other lineups.
Yeah, it was. I lost 60% of what I had out there. I didn't have a fighting chance because my bad chalk play of the day was JaVale McGee. Now I laid out why he was risky and said I would prefer to take a chance on Marcus Robinson, who
Mitchell
had
Robinson,
pardon
Mitchell Robinson, Mitchell
Mitchell
Robinson.
Robinson. Sorry, I had basketball players on my mind. College, that is. And he ended up with 36 fantasy points. Sadly, JaVale had a career game with
Yeah,
72 fantasy points with a 30 and 20. Oops, back to the drawing board there. I mean, kind of a victory because my pivot worked,
right. I
just
mean
not
that
against the original guy.
I had them really comparable, and I was overweight on both, but I had more Robinson, and so when Robinson was done, I was like, oh, cool, like that worked out really well. And then McGee played, and it was just like, damn, I very easily could have just had them flipped.
Yeah, yeah. So it was one of those. It's like, what are you gonna do? At least my alma mater ended up winning in the NCAA tournament. My bracket's already busted. I survived the. I have Auburn in the Final Four. I survived them winning by 1 point, but I had Wisconsin in the Final Four as well. They're out. It's tough when you lose your first round or your Final Four person in the first round, but that's okay. That's why I only do one bracket and don't do it for money anymore, Adam. Too volatile. Too volatile. Let's get on into the slate here. A couple reminders. We are pseudo brought to you by Thrive Fantasy. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end of the show. We are the guerrilla marketing campaign for them, but we'll drop in the link and tell you how you can get $5 free for literally just signing up. Not a bad way to go. If you have not signed up yet for Osimo, you can utilize the promo code NBA Strategy, all one word, and that will get you 50% off any 1 month package. And we've got some good stuff coming down the line. We're already writing the baseball previews. Those will be dropping, I believe, on Monday. They'll start. But Adam's got the AL East. Laffy, the NL East. I got the AL West. Spags is, what is he doing? I think NL Central. Jake's doing the AL Central. And Josh is taking, I guess that would be the NL West. So we got you covered, Adam. Have you done any drafts yet? I know this is a big draft weekend. I started last weekend. I've done about a half a dozen season-long drafts, and a couple of them best ball for the first time ever. That's been kind of fun. Drafting 40 people in a 12-team league, you get down real deep with some of the players.
Yeah, no, I haven't done any draft app yet. I'm splitting a team in the NFBC Vegas main event that drafts in like an hour and a half. So hopefully my partner isn't too hungover to do that draft, and he does well.
Oops, sorry, too many windows open there. In any event, let's get on to the old basketball slate. Apologies for the late start here, some technical difficulties, but we're back. And we've got the ticker working this week, so everybody should be happy. Let me see here. It's giving me guff here on the stream status. So I'm going to go into chat here. Chat, if this is crappy, let me know. Or for those of you watching in the premium Slack, just tag me. I'm getting some weird message I've never seen before. It says we're broadcasting, but there's some buffering issues. So, but that usually clears up shortly because I am running on high-speed internet plugged into the router, soup to nuts on a gaming computer, Adam, that I've never played a game on yet. So there we go.
Seems like a good use of money, Emac.
It is, because we don't want to count on your computer. So you just chat, fire up who has the money, who has the accolades, and who has the crappy equipment and technology. That would be Adam. Ship my alarm clock. Fair. All right.
To be fair, I was up. I started The Sopranos last night, and I'd never seen it before, and now I'm hooked, and time kind of got away from me.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give you a mulligan for that one you're only 20 years late to the party, but hey, it was a pretty good show, and that was like 6 seasons, I think, 5, 6, 7 seasons,
5 or 6, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very, very good, very, very good. Yeah, and in the first couple of years were just kind of something we had not seen before. So definitely. Okay, you get your mulligan for that. Don't ever let it happen again, unless you're watching some other show I liked. But we've got 7 Gamer here. We will have Live Before Lock with one Fast Eddie Fair taking you down the home stretch. We have a game starting at 6 o'clock today. That is Boston and Charlotte. We do have projections for that, but we're not going to cover it. It's just only available on the single game slates. So we're going to start out with Washington and Miami. We have Miami as one of the two teams on a back-to-back tonight, with Memphis being the other one. We've got Washington hanging on by a thread. They have a less than 1% chance of making the playoffs. We've got Miami on the back-to-back. They're still fighting to hang on to that last spot with Orlando and breathing down their neck. I think Orlando's a half game back, and then game behind Orlando is Charlotte, I believe. So, Adam, let's start off here with the Washington Wizards. It looks like we have a starting lineup change with Troy Brown Jr., the 19-year-old rookie. He was a one-and-done guy for the University of Oregon. He was the 15th player selected overall. And then Thomas Bryant looks like he will probably also be into the starting lineup here. That has moved Jeff Green to the bench. Trevor Ariza, I think, I can't tell if I lost my little sheet there. I think he's out or highly doubtful. I don't think he's going to play. We've got Beal ready to, I don't know. I want to tweet Scott Brooks and Ernie Grunfeld and just remind them he's all the Wizards have next year, and he has a history of lower leg injuries from overuse. Please, let's just acknowledge that the Wizards aren't going to make it this year. Start us off with what you see here for Washington.
Yeah, so I mean, starting with Beal, I think what you said is a good point, because I don't think he's going to just suddenly play 30 minutes or anything like that, but I'm not projecting him for those 39, 40-minute games anymore. I'm putting him in for 36 minutes. The Wizards have no reason to keep running him into the ground. They haven't had a reason to keep running him into the ground for the last week and a half, but I think that they finally accepted reality and that they're not going to make the playoffs. I think that Thomas Bryant joining Bobby Portis in the starting lineup is an indication that they have finally accepted that, because Scott Brooks talked about it and said that basically he wants to see them play alongside each other. He wants to see how they work together, because both of them are either unrestricted or restricted. I know Thomas Bryant's a restricted free agent this offseason. Portis, I don't know what his deal is, but I know that they have to make decisions on him as well. And so at this point, he said they're kind of experimenting with what they have. So I don't think that they will need to play Bradley Beal 40 minutes a night while they experiment with what they have. Just no real reason to expect that to happen. So combined with a difficult matchup against Miami, a more expensive price tag than a lot of appealing shooting guards on this slate, it makes it really hard for me to get to Beal. Much more interested in the Washington front court here. Still not an appealing matchup, but when you have Thomas Bryant for $4,400 with power forward eligibility on DraftKings, he's cheap on FanDuel as well, where it's normally tough to find a reasonably priced center. He's been a greater than a point per minute producer, really all season long. And the fact that he's playing alongside Portis just makes it easier for him to get minutes now. The fact that Ariza isn't going to play makes it easier for him to get minutes now. So I think that he's a pretty good value option. Portis is underpriced as well, because the lineup change makes it easier to pencil Portis in the 30-plus minutes. The way that Brooks was running the rotation before, you were getting Portis and Bryant not playing any minutes alongside each other. And if Bryant's going to play 18 to 20 minutes, that only leaves, 28 to 30 minutes for Portis. Now with them playing alongside each other, you can take minutes away from Jeff Green. You can give those minutes to Portis, and you can project him for, 30 to 33 minutes as well.
Now, from a popularity perspective here, colloquially known as ownership, we have Thomas Bryant on DraftKings at 51, Troy Brown Jr. at 37, Portis at 37 in this game. On FanDuel, similar cast of characters, slightly different order. It's Troy Brown Jr. at 54, Portis at 53, and then Bryant drops down to 25, but you can only have one center there on FanDuel. In light of this matchup here, generally Miami's a little bit better on defense. Not quite as quick as Washington, but Washington's going to drag any team with them up and down the court with the pace they play. Do you like where those current preliminary projection runs are coming in for that trio?
I mean, I would prefer if they were lower. I don't love taking really popular guys against Miami. But I think that the $4,400 tag on Bryant is really difficult to pass up. Portis would be one where maybe I'd be inclined to, still have kind of treat him like DeLon Wright yesterday, for example. DeLon Wright was like 50% owned. I had him in 20% of my lineups. I think that's where he should have been given the options around him. But you had the field just like flocking to this one play when there were a lot of other guys. That's kind of how I am with Portis here. I doubt that I get 37 or 40%, but I could see coming in at 20 or 25, and I don't see a reason that I would really need to be higher, given all the other options in his price range on this slate. Troy Brown, I think I'm kind of torn on because the matchup sucks. The minute should be there. I think that he is a reasonably good DFS player on a per minute basis. But again, the matchup's not good. He is playing minutes alongside the starters now where you would expect him to be a bit less productive. So I kind of feel in between on like Bryant and Portis. Like Brown's like kind of in the middle where I feel pretty confident I'll end up with less than 40% Portis. I feel pretty confident I'll end up with a ton of Bryant, and then Brown probably somewhere in between.
Yeah, and Brown is at 3,500 on FanDuel, is perfectly good candidate for a drop here. We were also going to talk about Quinn Cook, not to bury the lead, is going to be the value play du jour, but you're giving up your point guard spot with Quinn Cook. So you want to start thinking about how your overall lineup construction is going to be, particularly on DraftKings or FanDuel. You're giving up one of your two spots there, or guard spots with him. On DraftKings, similar situation because we have some good point guards that we're going to talk about. But Brown at small forward and then a DK shooting guard small forward hooks us up with some of those pesky spots there. So
I would think if I'm playing FanDuel, I would think I have somewhere close to 100% Troy Brown at 3,500.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just, it's like, well, shit, pair him with Kevin Durant and let's see what we can do at our other positions.
Small forward is a dumpster fire today, and especially on FanDuel where a lot of the small forward options I like on DraftKings are either shooting guards or power forwards on FanDuel. So it's really like it wouldn't even have surprised me if I play FanDuel if I had like 100% Durant plus Troy Brown lineups.
Okay. And that is a way to just get your leverage because you're going to be besting probably maybe 40% of the lineups will have that particular combination, 35. We'll have to see. All right, on the other side with Miami, they did play last night. We had just an abomination of a game there from Goran Dragic, who had scored nearly 20 real points in his last 3 games. Leading into last night's debacle. Hassan Whiteside looked great off the bench. Can we trust him? Because he looked great off the bench, but he also looks shitty when he's sitting on the bench, and you don't know he's going to play because he's coming in with the second unit. Maybe. You've got Olynyk and Bam, I'm assuming, are going to start again. Any interest in the front court there? D-Wade on a back-to-back. And then keeping in mind, Miami still hanging on to that 8th playoff spot. So it's not like they're mailing it in for this one. Anything you see here, just because it's such an enticing matchup against Washington. But I'm assuming Magruder's out, and whoever else was out last night will probably be out tonight.
So I mean, it's obviously a huge paced up spot for Miami. It's a really appealing matchup against Washington. Bam Adebayo is one of the pivots that I think you can look to off of Bobby Portis. He's just barely less expensive on DraftKings, but he has that same power forward center eligibility. It is a more favorable matchup. You probably see a couple of less minutes for Bam, but I would expect the ownership to be much lower than the 37% that we have Portis at right now. So he's a guy that I think you could pivot to there. I like the spot for him. Whiteside at 5,200 certainly gives you plenty of upside in tournaments. If I project him for 20 minutes, I get him as a viable option, which basically just means if something goes sideways and he plays more than 20 minutes, he ends up being a really good play. So on a 7-game slate, no problem, kind of just having some exposure to Whiteside there, but it clearly shouldn't be a priority. Derrick Jones at 3,800 gives you some value as a pivot away from Troy Brown. I think that they're pretty comparable. I think I would give the edge to Brown, but again, if you're talking about monster ownership on Brown, I don't think that he is going to beat Derrick Jones like 80% of the time or anything like that.
Yeah, and then just for perspective, sneak behind the curtain. You guys get all this if you are an Osmo Premium subscriber. You get all these ownership projections. This is the preliminary run. They'll do a couple updates throughout the day, and then as news breaks during that last 90 minutes, they usually end up doing it 3 or 4 times. But we do have Adebayo on FanDuel is at 15%, which is dramatically different than Portis. Josh Richardson at 14% on FanDuel is the only other person that is appearing in double digits. He projects out to about 4.4, 4.5 fantasy points per thousand on his $6,300 price tag. That's not anywhere near what we want to look for on FanDuel, which goes to show how craptastic that small forward position is. And then on DK, you get Adebayo at 12, which is fantastic. And I'd almost... Adam, I think, he came in with the injury tag and played and seemed okay last night, but I think I would prefer him to Portis just because at 3 or 1/3 of the popularity, that's seems like a nice spot because he gets to go against Portis and company.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that I prefer him to Portis because I would expect that I have more Portis than Bam. And like if I were just trying to make an optimal lineup, I would go Portis because I think he does play more minutes and we know how well he produces. But when you factor in the ownership, I think that it's a spot where if I were hand building a lineup, and because I've talked before about, I think that if you're like hand building a lineup, the best way to do it is to basically build just the best lineup you can, completely ignoring ownership, figure out the roster construction that way, and then basically find the 1 or 2 guys that are projected for high ownership that have the best pivots around them or that you feel the least confident in. I think Portis would be a candidate in that situation to just like replace him with Bam and you have a contrarian lineup. Or if you are multi-entering, like I said, I could see coming in under the field on Portis but still having a healthy amount and then just being over the field on Bam but not necessarily having more Bam than Portis.
All right, shall we move on to our next game here?
Yeah.
Philadelphia, Atlanta, coming in currently with the highest projected point total, 236 and a hook. We've got Philadelphia at 7.5 road favorites here. Now, when we look at the Cash Game Building Block article, I took some guff yesterday because of my bad chalk, which I'm glad the person who screenshot it and then everybody else that messaged me about it showed the caption because I said I think JaVale McGee's a great play. But here's why I'm going to go to this other direction. So
my question is, he wasn't chalk.
No, he wasn't. But I have to call something bad chalk so people understand and read it, and then I explain why. How do you have bad chalk in the morning? Because it's all based off projections and the best stuff. So unless you've got like a Raul Neto or some other shitbird. And you're one of the 1% best players in the world, but compared to your compatriots, don't want to play you, or Royce O'Neal, or someone that gets in there like that. You're just like, whoa. Yeah, Caboclo, exactly. Dorian Finney-Smith, any of those guys. Well, those guys don't generally pop because, wait for it, they don't project well, so they don't make it in the ownership projections. So I'm trying to find of the dozen or 2 dozen people to do it. So today, here's my caveat. I really don't want to have more than one of the Philly starters. I think this is a great spot for them, but all of them doing well, I don't know. Now, Atlanta's been frisky. God, they just beat, I think it was Utah, and they've been keeping it close well into the 3rd, if not the 4th quarter. So Atlanta's the kind of team that can prop people up. What I would love to see is someone get rest for Philadelphia in this one. Now, we had Joel Embiid, the most recent guy that missed a game. But if we were to have Butler or Simmons or even Tobias Harris out, I'm okay with it. And what I said here is I don't want more than one of them on a lineup, and I don't think I'm going to put more than them on on 20%. And even if the field creeps up, I'm not going to go there. But if someone's out, hell yeah, they're in a great spot. But we need someone to rest, much like we'll talk about with Golden State later. What do you like, assuming nobody rests for Philadelphia?
Joel Embiid for sure. Not so much on FanDuel, but at 10-7 on DraftKings, absolutely love him again today. Think that it's obviously a really good spot for all these Sixers. He still has over a 33% usage percentage since the Tobias Harris trade, 23% rebounding percentage, has averaged 1.6 points per minute since the trade. So 10 games over that span for Embiid. So still really like the spot for him. There are obviously on DraftKings a lot of underpriced centers as always, but I love Embiid. Jimmy Butler 7,100 is another really nice price tag, especially again on DraftKings, where he has small forward eligibility. Kevin Durant is the absolute priority for me at small forward, but if I need someone in that mid range, I think Butler's one of the guys that stands out at 7,100. Or Simmons is underpriced a bit at 8,300, but there's a lot of guys around him slate wide that I prefer. So the two guys that are really standing out are Embiid and Butler.
Yeah, and so we've got Simmons and Butler projecting the highest 23% apiece on DK, 20% apiece on FanDuel. We've got Joel Embiid coming in at 13 and 6, respectively. His price is just up a little more than the other guys. I mean, 12-1 on FanDuel, but 6% Joel Embiid, guy who's capable of 60 fantasy points in this matchup, even if he only plays 30 minutes at him. That feels like a nice tournament leverage spot there.
Yeah, I love Embiid.
From Atlanta, we have seen, I don't know. I don't want to say a bit of a mess, but it's been different players having the better games somewhat inconsistently amongst Herter and Prince and Dedmon and Bembry. And then you get the rare appearance from Vince Carter, and who knows what's going to happen with Alex Len. But Len and Dedmon do have 12 fouls combined, and we'll probably need them against Joel Embiid. That more or less leaves me with the two plays I prefer the best. You have John Collins at 7,000 on DraftKings. Nice price. Not the easiest of matchups because, he's going to have to help out on Embiid. 7,900 on FanDuel. Not quite as excited for him there. And then Trae Young, 7,900 on DK. Adam, he's down to 7,700 on FanDuel. We always know we got to check things out more when the FanDuel price is lower than the DK price because they have one more roster spot and a little bit higher of a salary cap, but it generally means that is potential value there. Talk to me about the Hawks.
Trae Young's the one that really stands out to me. You mentioned the FanDuel price, and for the most part this season, FanDuel's been really sharp with their pricing. They've actually done a good job, as much as I like to say bad things about FanDuel. They have done a good job of, since they incorporated the drop, of making sure that they're not giving you like too many free square plays in addition to it. Trae Young is the exception to that rule. They've been underpricing him for a while now. I got a lot of him last slate against Utah, which makes me pretty confident I'd be getting a lot of him against Philadelphia here. So he's averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute since the start of February. He's playing really well, has a 30.5% usage percentage, almost a 42% assist percentage over that span. Philadelphia has struggled with ball dominant guards all season long. They have not been a particularly good defense defending pick and roll. I'm pulling up his numbers now just to double check where he comes in. But yeah, so Trae Young has averaged the 6th most pick and roll possessions per game this season with 9.6. He hasn't been particularly efficient, but Philadelphia has been really not very good at defending it. So I think it sets up as a really good matchup for Young. It's a really nice price tag for Young. So he's the guy that really stands out. $7,000 John Collins on DraftKings is appealing. I have him a little bit behind Young, but I think that it's a nice price. I think Dedmon's another guy that you can throw into that category of pivots away from Bobby Portis. I don't like him as much in a vacuum, but he has been playing really well since the break. His rebounding numbers are up. He's put up a monster game against Utah in a tough matchup. He had a big game against, I think it was Houston, maybe the game before that. He's been playing really well, and it's a guy where he's, I assume, just going to be a fraction of the ownership of Portis, and he does give you, a reasonable pivot in tournaments.
Yeah, I was just looking back to him to see how he's done against Embiid. They've only faced each other twice between Dedmon's various injuries and Embiid getting rest and his various time off, etc. But they did play once earlier this season, and in 23 minutes, Dedmon put up 20 fantasy points. He did have 3 fouls. The time before that, they played at the beginning of the 2017 season, so 2 seasons ago. A lot has changed for these guys, but he had 5 fouls in 22 minutes. We know Dedmon and Alex Len, for that matter, do run into foul trouble from time to time. But I like that spot, Adam, and I think you're You're absolutely correct in calling that one out.
Yeah,
Anything?
I mentioned his numbers since the break. He's played 13 games since the All-Star break, 342 minutes. He's averaged 1.2 points per minute. So, I mean, I'm not saying that like we should be taking that sample and just making it his new like norm or anything. I'm just saying that, we've seen him actually be a productive per minute player in the Bobby Portis range for, almost 15 games now.
All right. Now I was looking something up and I can't remember what I was looking at. That's what I was. Just one sec for Deadman. What is his? And maybe you have it in front of you. How many? He's put up 206 3-pointers this season, which is pretty impressive, Adam. It's about 3.3 per game. That's kind of a lot for a center who didn't really exhibit that at the beginning of his career. So, new wrinkle in his game. Anything else from this matchup?
No, I mean, you mentioned Herter and Prince. Those guys are certainly filler in tournaments. Like, they have upside, but clearly not priorities for me. I would say Young is the priority, followed by Collins, followed by Dedmon.
All right. For those of you that are having some fun here with the with the March Madness, we do have a bunch of free content here on Osmo. So if you go up here to the homepage, you will see Alex's rankings. I think he's got projections in there as well. And then we've got a couple articles from Ben Rasa talking about betting and such, which is what he does in addition to being a DFS analyst. That was kind of how he found us. He was doing sports wagering, college basketball, college football, NFL football wagering, and then high-stakes DFS. So, yeah, he is living the dream. Gave up his finance job. Was doing this for about 3 years before he came on with us when we were at FanDuel. So he knows what he's doing, and he is holding court constantly there in the Slack chat, giving you advice, understanding what to do on how you're playing with your futures bets, with in-game betting, etc. So just saying, if that's something you're into, we got you covered here at Osmo. NBA Strategy, all one word, gets you 50% off any 1 month package, and that will take you all the way through March Madness. All right, Adam. Memphis, Minnesota. Memphis provided a ton of value last night. We had Mike Conley, who was out for general soreness, rest, whatever you want to call it, load management. These are all the terms that mean, yeah, we're giving him the night off. A few years ago, Greg Popovich put in Tim Duncan as DNP old. Okay? So this is if you hear general soreness, that's what load management used to be called. In that they're tired, so we're giving them the night off. So don't read into that. Conley is someone we see get rest down the stretch and on back-to-backs. He is expected to play tonight. He's still carrying the Q tag, but he is expected to play this evening. I'm still okay with our DeLon Wright and with Tyler Dorsey. The main reason being is Avery Bradley is going to be out for the next 7 to 10 days. His shin bruise was bad enough, Adam, that they did an imaging test on it to try to figure out, has it created some sort of stress fracture? What's going on? We may not see him for the rest of the season, but that's going to open up the minutes with Wright and Dorsey seeing time backing up Conley, Justin Holiday, who, found the basket last night, which is something he doesn't always do. But I like Wright and Dorsey again. Not the slam dunk spot it was, but it's still pretty good. And Dorsey's price didn't have time to move. I mean, it only came up about 10% across the board.
Yeah, I mean, Dorsey's still sitting at like 3,400 on DraftKings. I would expect him to play in the mid-20s in minutes. Wright is still affordable as well. He played 36 minutes in regulation 2 games ago when Conley was in. The one thing with Wright is that while the minutes are there, and that's certainly nice, he does take a hit when he plays alongside Conley in terms of his production. So that's something that you want to at least make sure that you're factoring into your projections so that you don't, like, he should not be grading out nearly as well tonight as he did last night, even if you give him the same amount of minutes. But it is a nice matchup against Minnesota. They've been one of the worst defenses in the league for the last couple of months. So no problem there. It's just kind of make sure that you're projecting him correctly.
Now, with regards to Conley, 7,500 on DK in particular is a nice spot. We do have guard, utility, point guard, so we have some flexibility here. He's been putting up some monster numbers at him when he has been playing. And let's see, this will be the fourth time he's gone against Minnesota in an average of 36 and a half minutes per game. He's been putting up just shy of 44 DK points per game, and he's a guy that doesn't generally get the double-double bonus. In his last handful of games here. In his last 3 games, he's averaging just shy of 50 fantasy points per game. He got denied off. This one is at home. How do you like Mike Conley, knowing that we have a ton of other plays at point guard?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly in the conversation there. Same ballpark as Trae Young for me. I think, and I mentioned this on the podcast, the early bird with Dan Strafford that I did last night. Talking about DraftKings, because FanDuel, I think that Young really stands out. But talking about this range on DraftKings, there are a lot of guys I like. And so I'm not saying I like them as in like, I'm just trying to name a bunch of guys that I think are good plays. I'm saying it as in, I don't think I'll have significantly more of one of these guys than the others. I think that my ownership in general on the slate will be pretty spread out at the center position. It'll be pretty spread out at the point guard position. It'll be a lot more concentrated at the forward positions. So Conley's another one of these mid-range point guards that I think is a good play. He's in a good spot. Assuming he goes, I expect him to play his normal, somewhere 32 to 34 minutes. He has a 28.5% usage rate since Mike Conley was traded, or since Marc Gasol was traded. He's averaged 1.2 fantasy points per minute. I think that he's a good play at 7,500.
All right. What about Jonas Valanciunas? He's coming in at 40% on DraftKings, 24% on FanDuel. Back-to-back doesn't excite me as much, but he hasn't played a ton this season with Toronto. He's sort of been unleashed here. We don't have word yet, I don't think, on Joakim Noah, but assuming Noah's out, would you go back to Valanciunas with any sort of, I don't want to say majority, with any sort of emphasis tonight?
If Noah's out, absolutely. I mean, there would be no reason not to. If Noah's in, I still would. I'm expecting Noah to play. He went through warm-ups yesterday. Okay. It sounds like they probably just were resting him on the front end of the back-to-back. But even if he's in, I would project Valanciunas for 27, 28 minutes, and that would make him a really good play in a favorable matchup at a reasonable price tag. If Noah's out and your center options are Valanciunas and Ivan Rabb again, then Valanciunas should be one of the most popular plays on the slate.
All right, last one. We've saw it mentioned in both chats, both Premium Slack, and I saw it in YouTube. Chandler Parsons. He's been put in bubble wrap for the better part of the last 3 seasons. He's been okay. It's a back-to-back. We thought Bradley Beal is a potential for lower leg injuries because of use. Can you go back to the Chandler Parsons way?
I mean, he's been playing well and getting, I expect him to get 24, 25 minutes here. The $3,700 price tag is certainly appealing. I don't think I'll end up with much of him. I haven't been recently. I think that it's mostly, I think, just a brief stretch of him playing well, but I still don't really project him as a very useful fantasy option. But I mean, at 3,700, it's pretty tough to fail. I would much rather play Parsons than Bruno, even if I project Bruno for 30 plus minutes.
Right. Moving to the other side here for Minnesota, I'm going to call up. Let's see. We have Taj Gibson is questionable with a calf injury. Tyus Jones is getting a ton of minutes, but his price has come up and his production hasn't really kept pace. Jared Bayless, God, I think at some point he played for Memphis if you want to play that card. Do we know for sure that Teague and Rose are out? I thought one of them was ruled out for the rest of the year.
They're both out for the rest of the year.
Both have been? Okay. Would you, starting there, would you go with either of the backcourt, the point guard options? Just because there are so many tonight, I want to call them out as a differentiation type play.
Yeah, I want to see. I don't remember what Jones' price is on FanDuel. He's been another guy like Trae Young that has been more favorably priced on FanDuel.
He is 5,400 on FanDuel, 56 on DK.
A much better FanDuel play than DraftKings play. Still not a particularly appealing matchup at all, but again, with FanDuel's pricing just being tighter, I think that it's a spot where Tyus Jones grades out well there, but I have next to no interest on DraftKings.
All right, and just some of these guys we'll hit on a little bit because it looks like there is Reasonable. I mean, clearly the sites are taking into account um, the NCAA tournament, but they both have the 2 game 8 o'clock turbo slate there that has Timberwolves, Grizzlies, and Jazz Bulls. So just looking a little deeper on some of those main slate plays, your mileage may vary on that. But you start looking at Jared Bayless and some of the other guys when the things get thin or you're playing the showdown slates, etc. Moving along, let's go to the front court here. You've got Andrew Wiggins. Has just been a whole lot of meh, in my opinion. It's never getting those peripherals. You have Dario Saric getting a moment here and there. And then you have someone who's been phenomenal. Karl Anthony Towns has just been crushing it. I think he has been 3 of the last 5 games he's played. He's been the cover boy for the Cash Game Building Block article. He's not tonight just because Steph Curry is out, but he's ranked as one of the most highly projected performers this evening. What do you want to look at? Start off, let's get Wiggins and Saric out of the way before you gush about Karl Anthony.
Yeah, so I mean, Saric is whatever to me. I've been projected for 28 minutes. He's averaged 0.83 points per minute since coming over to Minnesota without Teague or Rose on the floor. That's about what I've been projected for here. So he comes out as a completely mediocre play that I doubt I get much of. Andrew Wiggins, I'm higher on. He has a 28.4% usage rate since the trade without Rose or Teague on the floor, 0.92 fantasy points per minute. But again, he's a guy that on DraftKings has small forward eligibility, which makes it easier to get him into some lineups. He has been having his minutes staggered with Towns, which is useful for him. So I think that he's a perfectly fine, kind of like secondary option. And then Towns is the one clearly that stands out. 1.65 DraftKings points per minute in 669 minutes without Teague or Rose on the floor since Jimmy Butler was traded. 32.5% usage, 22% rebounding percentage, 26.5% assist percentage. Just gets it done, all the way across the board. Even if I project him for 34 minutes, which is down from what he was playing earlier in the season, he still grades out as like the top center at 10,500 on DraftKings.
All right, and that's sort of where I was landing at. Well, from a popularity standpoint, he is 16% on DK, 11% on FanDuel, but from a raw points projection, he's a top 3 player, as you can see coming across the scroll on beneath us here, along with Embiid and Durant. They're all very tightly packed.
And just to reiterate, like I really, really like Towns, but again, center is a position where I do plan on spreading out my exposures because I really like Towns, I really like Embiid, I really like Drummond, I really like Cousins, I really like 7 different centers.
Shall we head on to
Valanciunas, forgot about him.
Shall we head on to Utah and Chicago?
Yep.
Start off with our home team here. We don't yet know the status of Zach LaVine. That is kind of it's the fulcrum that would bring Shaq Harrison into play and would make Chris Dunn actually appealing. If LaVine is in, I really don't have interest on either of those guys outside of that 2-game 8 o'clock slate. Markkanen, been up, been down. I say he's awesome. He underperforms. I make him bad chalk. He has his best game in since the triple overtime game. Adam, I don't know what to rationally do with him. Talk to me here about the Bulls.
Really just tough to talk about at this point because there's so many moving parts. Not only is he questionable, but Chris Dunn's questionable as well. So yeah, he's questionable with a back injury. So who knows? If everyone's in, I don't have much interest anywhere. I think that the price tag on Markkanen is still low enough where he has tournament appeal, but the power forward position does have enough options where I'm not prioritizing anyone against Utah if they're all healthy. If LaVine is out, well, and Porter's doubtful, so Shaq Harrison should start. If everyone is in except Porter, I still don't have interest in Shaq Harrison, though. We talked last slate about how much worse he is playing alongside LaVine than without him. I think a lot of people got bailed out by the Zach LaVine news because they were going to play Shaq Harrison anyway. But if LaVine's in, I would have no interest in Harrison. If LaVine's out, I have some interest in Harrison. I still would rather play Troy Brown. I still don't like the matchup, obviously, against Utah, but Harrison would be a viable value option. If LaVine's out and Dunn is in, then Dunn becomes a good play again. It's obviously not a good matchup against Utah, but his usage jumps and his assist percentage jumps when LaVine is out. and he just becomes a much more productive fantasy player. So I would like him at 5,500. If they're both out, then you get, $3,400 Ryan Arcidiacono as a value option. You get Shaq Harrison as an more appealing play. You get Lauri Markkanen getting a boost. There's a ton of moving pieces here that hopefully we'll get, early news from shoot around today.
All right, and then of course you've got Live Before Lock with Fast City Fair that will give you the updates all the way down the home stretch. 7 games, a lot of moving parts. I suspect we will be starting that at 5:45 this evening. I'm just looking at the Bulls here because I know they're on a. Pardon me, not the Bulls. Call up the Bulls. And I want Utah. The Bulls are home after being on the road quite a bit, but then they're going back out on the road. But I wanted to see where Utah was because I thought that this is a 4-game road swing that they are on, and I was just curious when they play next. So, okay, they'll be back home. So this is game 4 of their 4-game road trip. Their East Coast swing took them through Washington, New York, and Atlanta on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. They're wrapping it up today in Chicago. They'll be back home against Phoenix on Monday. So for Utah, nice little island game for them here, and I'm sure they'll be thrilled to get back home. Ricky Rubio's price has been rather intriguing because through a variety of game circumstances, he has just not really played a ton, and I think people are sort of souring on him or just off him because they think it's a new minutes concern with him. But he really hasn't played a ton in fourth quarter of the last almost half dozen games. Adam, are you interested in him at all? We know that the Western Conference has OKC, the Clippers, Utah Jazz, and San Antonio Spurs separated by 1 game for spots 5 through 8. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Sacramento's all but eliminated. They're half a dozen games out of that 8th spot. But Utah's going to want to keep winning because the higher up they get, the less chance they're going to take on the Warriors or the Nuggets. What are you thinking here with any of the Jazz?
I'll start. So Gobert is another center that I like. It's a favorable spot against Chicago. He's a really good, per minute producer, 1.25 to 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Again, he kind of just gets lost in the shuffle like he does a lot because you have guys at the top that are just higher raw points guys. You have guys that are cheaper, that are better point per dollar guys. But if you get to Rudy Gobert, it's certainly not someone that I would be like shying away from. Derrick Favors is the one that I really wanted to point out, though. 5,700 on DraftKings, same price range as Bobby Portis, yet another guy that we can turn to as a pivot. He's been great over the last month and a half, going on 2 months. He's averaged 1.28 DraftKings points per minute over his last 19 games, which goes back to the start of February. 20.6% usage rate, 18.3% rebounding percentage. It's a big Chicago front court, so I would think that he probably gets his 26 instead of 24 minutes. I really, really like Derrick Favors here quite a bit. As far as Rubio goes, I still am interested in him. I've been rostering him a lot over the last couple of days or last couple of games, but his price tag is slowly climbing. He had already been he had already been like correctly priced on FanDuel, but on DraftKings now he jumped another 10% up to 5,700. That's about where I think he should be if he's going to play 28 minutes. So I have him for 28 minutes. I have him as a viable, like I'd rather play him than Tyus Jones at that price tag, but I don't think it's a price range that I get to very much at the point guard position because you have Quinn Cook at the bottom and then you have all the guys up at the top. So I think it'll be kind of tough to get there. So Favors is the one that I think I probably roster the most from Utah. Gobert is the one that I project the best, but he's just at a really deep position. Donovan Mitchell, kind of the same as Rubio, where I think that he's good. Like it's why you can't talk about things in terms of like I like this guy or I dislike that guy because I like Donovan Mitchell. I just don't like him nearly as much as I like a lot of other shooting guards.
All right. The only thing I was concerned about with Favors, and I think I'm lifting those concerns or making them no longer concerns, is he sat out the second half of the game in Washington on Monday because of hamstring soreness, but he then played on Wednesday and Thursday 26 and 27 minutes. So I don't think we have to be concerned about this. Fun guessing game, Adam. How many fouls do you think Favors has in his last 100 minutes?
5.
Close. 3. Just 3. That's for someone who gets 3 a game, it seems like. That's not too shabby. That's not too shabby.
He has 5 though. Looking at it.
Well, I'm doing the math. I'm sorry. I was looking at game logs and trying to guess. Well, how about in his last 89 or 94 minutes?
Yeah. All right. Now we're at 3.
Okay, there we go. Damn you and your computers.
I had him pulled up when you asked. So I was like, oh, I'll get this one right.
Oh, good times. All right. That's going to wrap up that game. Oh, let's just get right into it. Steph Curry is out. Andrew Bogut is out. Sean Livingston is out. Tonight's Tyler Dorsey Award goes to Quinn Cook. So Quinn Cook is going to be in our plans tonight. He is literally essentially the minimum price across the board. I don't think he's going to put up 50 fantasy points like Dorsey did. However, he should see, I'm guessing, 28 to 31 minutes. With Curry and Livingston out, then he's going to be probably running stuff with the second unit, because otherwise they're down to Damian Lee. So I would suspect that Durant and Draymond, etc., Clay will handle some ball handling duties when Cook is off the court. If we take Cook off and put Durant on, you get if you take Curry off and put Cook and Durant on, just to kind of give a representative sample size of him with the starters, he's got about 0.85 fantasy points per minute. If we take just Curry off and don't worry about anything else, he's got about 0.88 fantasy points per minute. So I think that's kind of our projection. Means we've got about a reasonable 25 fantasy point baseline for him, Adam, with gusts up to 30 fantasy points if he's hitting his shots or plays extra minutes. What do you want to do here with Cook? I know you were super heavy on Dorsey last night. I think your message said 100%. Are you doing the same thing with Cook tonight for starters?
I would think that I'm close if I don't get there. So I think it's very similar to the Dorsey thing last night, where obviously you're not expecting 50 fantasy points, but there's when someone's the flat minimum, it's just a totally different ballpark than when you're talking about value in like that 4,500, 5K range. Like, and the comparison I'll use is Dorsey and DeLon Wright from last night. DeLon Wright was clearly a good value play, but everyone kind of overinflated him because and didn't factor in that there were plenty of guys around him that had the same kind of upside. Whereas with Dorsey, he was low. Like in the $15 on DraftKings, DeLon Wright was 47% and Dorsey was 41%. And that's just flat out wrong and dumb, because like Dorsey, there's no pivots around Dorsey at 3K that we could project for like 32 minutes last night. With the especially with the point per minute production that we expected from Dorsey, whereas there were plenty of guys around Wright that are comparable. And it's the same kind of thing here, where there's just nobody at $3,000 that you can project for close to 30 minutes. And even playing alongside Kevin Durant without Curry, Cook averages 0.81 points per minute. There's just nothing at the minimum range that is even comparable to that. And then you factor in that there's no bigger like difference in price. Like the $1,000 from $3,000 to $4,000 is the biggest $1,000 there is. It's 33% of that $3,000 price, and so it's so valuable when you can get someone at the minimum price that it's just basically impossible for me not to have Quinn Cook as my highest owned guy. The one thing that makes it a little bit difficult to get to like 100% is he does not have multi-position eligibility on DraftKings. He is only a point guard. Trae Young is only a point guard. Mike Conley is only a point guard. There are several only point guard options that are really good plays today. And so I don't know that I'll get 100%, especially when you consider how many good centers there are too. So I'm not going to want to necessarily be taking up utility spots with point guards. But I do think I'll obviously have a ton of him because he's $3,000 and in a good matchup and should play around 30 minutes.
All right. Now, so just sticking on the backcourt, both sides, they either have this game on the main slate or they're running it as a standalone game. It's not on the 8 o'clock slate because, the more we can slice and dice this, the more we can pay the rake for them. Oh, yeah. That's so much fun. In any event, would you consider a Damian Lee in this one? Would you consider an Andre Iguodala? My one concern with them is I could see Dallas just, I don't want to say laying down, but I could see them being down by 20 at the half. and this becoming a game with a lot of bench guys in it on the Golden State side. What do you think if you're stretching a little bit deeper on just a single game slate?
Iguodala would be the one that's most appealing to me, just because you could see a little bit of additional ball handling for him with the second unit. I don't have a ton of interest there. I would much rather just play the good players from Golden State. But
when you're on a player pool of one game, salary cap does come into play here, Adam. I know you're
Iggy would be the guy.
Okay.
Like him and McKinney, I guess.
Okay. McKinney, good one. I wouldn't have thrown
not a good one, but McKinney.
Let me rephrase that. Thank you for pointing that one out as someone we can give consideration to, though we will try to find better players than him if we are constructing just one lineup. Did that work?
Sure.
Disclaimers. Did you do disclaimers 101?
I would try and find better players than him if I were constructing 550 lineups also.
All right. Point taken. One of the things I am curious to hear what you have to say because of that potential, we're going to call it blowout, but right now as it stands, Golden State's 15.5 point favorites. Yeah, they screw around in the first half of a lot of games, but Dallas kind of outmatched, sorry to say. And Dallas has been on a bunch of road games lately. Looks like Doncic could be getting a little tired, etc., etc. You've got guys that are really going to have, in addition to Cook, all improve with Curry off the floor. Draymond kind of neutral, but Clay gets better, Durant gets better, Cousins gets better. Those guys should all be in there. I am creating a rule where I'm not going to play more than 2 of that quartet because I already think I'm going to have a boatload of Cook anyway. Are you doing anything like that tonight, or do you have your projections and such set up that it won't get there because you're controlling it through exposure or other things?
No, I mean, what I'll probably do is, I think what you just said, I won't want more than 2 probably of Durant, Thompson, Cousins, Green.
Yeah.
And then, like, obviously I can throw Cook in there. I can throw Iguodala in there or whatever. Just because on one, I don't even know if I'll do that, though, especially on DraftKings. The prices are so cheap.
Yeah, it gets to be one of those things. And now I use that as so I have the free articles while I'm bringing this up, and I do a fantasy cruncher tip of the day every day. And this is a sort of a challenge we run into with like the Wizards or Brooklyn or some of the other teams that just have some interchangeable parts. This one tonight feels like so many of them are coming in at such good point per dollar plays. My worry is if Dallas flames out, I'm left holding the bag on a bunch of these guys that were great and then don't play their fourth quarter shifts.
So the counter argument to that, the Golden State specific counter argument to that would be that their minutes will be staggered. So you're going to have some combination. I have to go back and see if I can figure it out from last time Curry was out. I haven't looked yet, but you're going to have some combination of those main guys that are starting the fourth quarter. Probably like Thompson and Cousins maybe, but I'll have to go back and look. But regardless, Kerr staggers minutes. So You're going to have some of the starters starting the fourth quarter. He also historically he kind of does the Quinn Snyder thing where his starters play, as long as the game's not like an absolute embarrassment, his starters get some fourth quarter minutes at home. Which makes it a little bit safer. But the thing for me too, why I'm not sure that I'm actually going to put that rule in is right now, if I put Kevin Durant at 34 minutes and I put Clay at 34 minutes and I put Cousins at 26 minutes, which if this game were competitive down to the wire, they would play more minutes than that. Mm-hmm. But if I give them those minutes, they still all grade out as absolutely fantastic plays. So that just speaks to how underpriced that they are for Curry not to be in. I don't necessarily think that, like, it's not likely that you can roster Durant, Thompson, and Cousins together and get 50, 60 plus point games from all of them, or even 40 plus. But you certainly could, and at their price tags, it's possible. I think so. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I want to approach that because I just think that they are so underpriced, and they do get such a boost without Curry out there that it could definitely work out.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those. Once you start hitting crunch, other positions are going to open up, et cetera. Things may happen. And if you end up where you're like, 10% of my lineups have 3 of those guys, yeah, I don't need that rule because whatever. Things are dispersed enough that fine. Those must be the best plays. But just something to think about as we get there. If we find out that Iguodala is starting, this is a question from Shep here in the premium chat. Does that affect anything that you consider with Cook?
No, not really. I mean, I would probably give Cook like 26 minutes instead of 30. But
At his minimum price, it's hard
right.
to pass up. Now, if he were 10-15% more, okay, now we're starting to look at a question of what do we do? Does that make him not make Adam not want him on 90-ish% of his lineups and maybe only 65% or something like that? I think it's going to be something. Those are extreme examples, but that's something I think it would be on the margins. It takes something really cataclysmic to, I think, move us off a lot of Quinn Cook.
Well, and the other thing is, so if he comes off the bench, it's really tough to figure out a rotation where he doesn't play at least like mid-20s in minutes. And if he comes off the bench, you're maybe losing a few minutes compared to if he starts, but you're gaining per minute production for a time that he's not playing with the entire group of Thompson, Durant, and Cousins. So I think it ends up coming out not like close to a wash. Like I would still prefer that he starts, but I still think that kind of regardless, I get a lot.
All right, from the Dallas side here, they have lost 15 of their last 17 games. We've seen them. This is the third leg of a road trip or third game of their current road trip. They lost in Portland, got their ass handed to them. They lost in Sacramento, got their ass handed to them. And then prior to that, they lost at home to New Orleans, of all teams, who doesn't really want to win. That's where I have my one fear is, can they keep it up with the Golden State Warriors? So focusing now on the Dallas Mavericks side, talk to me, who loves Quinn Cook, who loves Luka Doncic more, you or Josh? Or are you guys equally kind of coming back down a little bit since we've seen him look a little lead-legged, if you will?
Josh hates Luka Doncic, and I don't really know why.
Okay.
I love Luka. I'm terrified of this spot. It's a road 3 and 4 going at Golden State. Like obviously, there's a lot of risk here. I wouldn't touch Luka in cash games. I don't think there's any reason to on this slate. Where I do find him appealing, though, is and it's just an interesting roster construction thought that I think goes overlooked a lot. We know these Golden State guys are going to be very popular. Cook obviously is going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate. We didn't even really talk about it, but Durant's the best play on the slate amongst normal priced guys. Cousins will be popular. Thompson will be popular. So you're going to have a ton of the field on Golden State. And then they're not going to play anyone from Dallas because they're scared of the blowout or because they don't project quite as well or whatever the reason. And it opens up some value as far as upside goes because you can be contrarian just by being overweight on Luka Doncic. You're going to get natural game stacks where you have those chalk guys that everyone else has from Golden State, but then you also have the best player on Dallas. And if Dallas somehow does keep this game close and it's competitive to the end, you're sitting there in a great spot relative to the field. So again, not someone that I think you need to take a chance on in cash, but all the risk in the world doesn't take away the fact that there is monster upside for a guy at 8,600 that can go for 60 plus fantasy points.
5% on DK right now, projected ownership.
I would be very surprised if I don't have more than 5% Luka.
Right. On FanDuel, he's 9,600 shooting guard eligible. He's at 4%. That's a little bit tougher price point there. Let's say he were to get 55 fantasy points. Does that do it for you on FanDuel at 96?
It's okay. I'm pulling up their shooting guard pricing now just to kind of see how he is relative to everyone else because I know there's been a couple of slates recently where I've said that I don't like him as much on FanDuel, and then I get my lineups done and I realize he's still my highest owned guy. I think that I'd rather play Devin Booker for 300 less. I'd rather play Mitchell for 500 less. I'd absolutely rather play Clay for 1,200 less. I'd rather play Butler for.
Is Hield Shooting guard or small forward on
shooting guard. I'd much rather play $7,400 Hield. So yeah, I think that, and it's the case on DraftKings too. There are a lot of point guard, shooting guards that I like a little bit more than Doncic, but the price tag on DraftKings is just more appealing than it is on FanDuel, and the added bonus of I know that my exposures are going to be very heavy on Golden State, and it just gives me a greater overall upside to have a little bit more Dallas guys than the field.
All right. On DK, Justin Jackson checks in as the most popular play on this team at 10%. He's 3,400. Shooting guard, small forward. Eligibility there. For some reason, we got a little love here for Trey Burke. He is the absolute minimum, 3K, 3,510 across the three main sites. He may only get 17 fantasy points, so be careful with that. Be careful. Just because someone has a nice ratio doesn't mean the upside is there, because these are median outcome projections here. Maxi Kleber is, I guess, in the mix at 4,800, but he's kind of coming up a little bit there, Adam. I don't really like him going against Draymond and Cousins. And then Jalen Brunson, I'd rather get Ricky Rubio for a very similar price point. What do you like amongst the non-Luka Doncic Mavs?
The value on Justin Jackson is nice. I don't think Justin Jackson's a very good DFS player on a per minute basis, obviously, but he's played 33 and 34 minutes his last two games. Hardaway is out for the year. Dorian Finney-Smith has played 10 and 11 minutes, so it seems like Jackson is getting the run there. He's played 92 minutes alongside Luka without Hardaway this year. He's averaged 0.57 points per minute. So very, very small sample size, obviously, but we know from his time with Sacramento that we shouldn't expect great production from him. But, at 3,400, again, it's just a really, really valuable price point, and the minutes are there. So Justin Jackson, I'm fine with whatever I get. I'm less excited about him than I am about Cook or than I was about Dorsey yesterday, but 3,400 is 3,400. If you're going to get, around 26 minutes from Maxi Kleber, then it's okay. Not a priority for me. Trey Burke, I think, plays around 20 minutes at 3K. He's the kind of guy that can get hot and play extra minutes, but that makes him purely a tournament option. So, I mean, it's Luka is my favorite guy from Dallas as far as, guys that I think could potentially win you a tournament. Justin Jackson is the guy that I probably get the most of just because of his value.
All right. Let's see. We got two more games here. Go ahead and give a like there, because a like for this show is a like for Adam, and it's a mark against Josh. So just putting that out there. For those of you who want to support Team Ship My Modem, definitely give us a like here. If we get up to 150 likes, Adam will buy a modem before his next show. There you go. We're at 50 right now, Adam. That's a reasonable stretch goal, but I think we can get there. All right, final two games of the evening here. One really fun. One, we'll see. It'll be a great basketball game. I don't know what we'll do from a fantasy perspective, but let's start off with Phoenix and Sacramento. We know that, Kelly Oubre done for the year. I doubt we're ever going to see TJ Warren this season. We've got, what else do we have? Lots of fun stuff here, but let's start off with the Suns. Devin Booker, absolutely phenomenal. Love him. We've got Josh Jackson, somewhat intriguing. And I think this is a great matchup for Willie Cauley-Stein, as well as Marvin Bagley. I think Harry Giles was a little bit dinged up, so we'll have to see what happens there. He's got thigh bruise. So talk to me here a little bit about the Suns.
So some moving pieces here. Tyler Johnson questionable and Josh Jackson questionable. That obviously changes a lot, because if Johnson is in, he plays probably around 32 minutes. If Jackson is in, he plays somewhere around 32 minutes. If one or both are out, then Jimmer Fredette probably goes from 12 minutes to mid-20s. At 3,300, he's certainly a guy that you could take some shots on in tournaments, since we have absolutely no idea what to expect from him. But we do know that he's been playing basketball in China and scoring 36 points a game. So he would benefit potentially from one or both of those guys being out. As far as guys that don't depend whatsoever on news, Devin Booker in a great spot, really fast-paced game. Sacramento has been relatively efficient defensively since the start of February, ranking 10th defensive rating. But the pace they play at just kind of makes that irrelevant for DFS purposes, or not irrelevant, but not really that important. So Booker, obviously a quality play here, should play 36, 37 minutes as long as this game's competitive. Should get up, plenty of shots. If Johnson's out, he'll have the ball in his hands a bit more as well. Not that, Johnson takes that much away from him anyway. DeAndre Ayton is a good center play, especially 7,100 on DraftKings. Sacramento, not a good rebounding team. Ayton should get somewhere in the 33-minute range. So I like that. You have Mikal Bridges as a secondary option. He would get more minutes, I expect, if Jackson is out. But even if Jackson's in, I would expect low to mid-30s from Bridges. As far as cheap tournament guys with upside go, you have Rashawn Holmes at power forward on FanDuel for almost the minimum, and at 3,700 with power forward eligibility on DraftKings. You never expect big minutes from him because for the most part, he doesn't play alongside DeAndre Ayton. But even if you get 15, 16 minutes from Holmes in this spot, he easily could go out there and give you like a 23, 24-point game. So he's someone to at least, be rotating through the player pool if you're max centering.
All right, moving on to Sacramento. Sorry, I had to answer a text there, so I wasn't fully paying attention. Sacramento, I like De'Aaron Fox, but he's point guard eligible. That gives me a little boost to looking at Buddy Hield. The flexibility is still enough here on DraftKings that we don't have to worry too much about it, especially with the price point on Fox. And his minutes have been coming back up again. Now, the Kings are all but eliminated from the playoffs, but home game, their fans have been getting into it. It's a good season here, etc. So I expect them to be playing hard, at least when they're finishing up the season at home. And then Willie Cauley-Stein, Adam. Let's assume that Giles just plays his usual minutes. How do you like the Willie Cauley-Stein potential upside here?
If Giles is in, I'm not really there because we have him losing minutes to Giles and then probably also losing a few minutes to Bagley. The last game that Giles did not leave early, Bagley actually closed at center. And that is, if that continues to happen, that's basically death to the value for Willie Cauley-Stein, because it's one thing if you're giving Cauley-Stein 27, 28 minutes and giving Giles 19 or 20. It's another thing if Giles is getting his 19 to 20 and then Bagley's grabbing another 4 or 5 at the position. So, if Giles is out, then obviously Cauley-Stein becomes a much better play. If Giles is in, I don't see getting there. Bagley, on the other hand, absolutely love. He's averaged about 1.25 DraftKings points per minute since the start of February. He's still only $6,300 on DraftKings. Another guy in that Bobby Portis range, a little bit more expensive, but in that Bobby Portis range that I just really, really like. And I expect, 28, 29 minutes from Bagley here.
Yeah, and that was going to be my follow-up question, because it's not like they're going to run him into the ground, but against Dallas, 28 minutes, 47 fantasy points. Against Brooklyn, 29 minutes, almost 40 fantasy points. Hey, similarly tasty matchup here. If he's going to get 26 to 28 minutes, fire him up, especially on the late slate, but definitely on that main slate. Are you ready to go to our last game, Adam, or is there anything else you wanted to touch on here from Phoenix or Sacktown?
One just FanDuel specific play from Sacramento, Bielitsa with small forward eligibility. I mentioned that a lot of the guys that I like at small forward on DraftKings are not small forwards on FanDuel. Bielitsa has played 27 and 28 minutes his last couple of games. It seems like, at least based on the way the current rotation has gone, that Yogi Ferrell is essentially not going to get many minutes, and then Bogdanovich is losing minutes, but the Bielitsa is still firmly in the rotation as of now. So I think that at small forward, he's a pretty viable option. Still Troy Brown.
Okay. I was watching a show, I don't know, maybe it was Wednesday, because it was it must have been Thursday, because it was Laffy and Josh, and Josh, now I'm just going to stir the pot here. Josh was finishing up Sacramento, and he said, "Oh, I got one more thing to add. Blah blah blah. Adam's gonna say something about Felicia."
That's because the other day Josh jammed in a bunch of whatever the chalk was, and Bielitsa outscored him.
It's last game of the night. Shout out to one of my buddies who I know is watching out there in the Pacific Northwest. We had the University of Washington Huskies survive the first round. He is. I'm going to be helping him out with the baseball draft he's doing here in a little bit, Adam, because you know what? Tis the season for baseball. Don't forget, we've got all sorts of baseball content here at Osmo. Use the promo code NBA Strategy for any 1 month package. That includes you can pick a baseball, you can pick all premium, whatever you want. You get 50% off. Use promo code NBA Strategy, all one word at checkout to get that offer. We're going to have a couple free pieces up there to get everybody fired up and started prepping because Thursday's the big day. Even though the Mariners are now 2-0, Adam, nobody's even close. 2 times infinity versus the rest of the league. That will be the last time they're above 500 and leading anything is my guess, but we'll have to see what happens there. But let's finish off this nightcap game here. Detroit at Portland. Portland is going to be without CJ McCollum probably until the first round of the playoffs. As he's coming back from injury. So we have Damian Lillard just in an absolutely outstanding spot. Now, I gave the slight nod today to Kevin Durant just because he's small forward and there's a bunch of guys here at point guard that we can look to. But in 476 minutes with CJ McCollum off the court this season, Lillard is averaging 1.62 fantasy points per minute and a 38.1 usage rate compared to 1.2 minutes and a 27% usage rate alongside CJ McCollum in 2005 minutes. How was that, Adam? See, I can look these stats up too.
Yeah, he's obviously been really good. He's played 166 minutes without McCollum on the floor and with Nurkic on the floor. The usage rate has dropped to 31.1%, but the assist percentage is up at 48.5%. Obviously that can come down some, but the point is just that even if he's not shooting, he's still making the plays out there. So if you go back to last season, he's played 456 minutes alongside Nurkic, 30.7% usage, 40.1% assist percentage. So even if I take that assist percentage, I get him projected for 52 to 53 DraftKings points. It is an unappealing matchup against a very slow Detroit team, the slowest pace in the league actually since the start of February, a competent defense as well, but obviously a very good player in Lillard and a ton of upside there. I agree with you. I have him behind Durant. He's just more expensive, and it's a worse matchup, and he doesn't benefit quite as much as Durant does when Curry's out. I still do really like Lillard, but again, there's just so many good point guard options that I think I'll be pretty spread out there, and I imagine I'll have less Lillard than I have the last couple of times that he's played.
Yeah, and that absolutely makes sense because the matchup, the pace, and the price point have him at about 4.8 per thousand on DK and about 4.4 on FanDuel. And that's not really where we want to go. Now, that's projecting him for 48 and 46 points, respectively, on those sites. Could he get 55? You betcha. He can shoot. He's going to be facilitating the offense. We could easily see mid-teens in assists tonight. And that can happen even in the half-court game if Detroit tries to slog things down. But there are so many other players coming in at about a 20 to 25% discount in games that are going to be a little bit faster. So food for thought. We've got him at 8% on DK and 17% on FanDuel. So nice price point there. But you would really only need 15% to really be above the field on DK and maybe 25% on FanDuel. So that's something to look at. Nurkic, yes, I like him. Non-existent on FanDuel just because of his price point. He's projecting at 1%. But on DK, we got 2 slots where we can use him. He's 7,300. Someone's going to have to battle against Andre Drummond. It's going to be Nurkic. How are you feeling about that particular matchup against those 2 behemoths?
I mean, I think the minutes should be there. I don't think that we should be scared off by the last game. That was a game against Dallas that kind of got out of hand in the fourth quarter. Nurkic never came back. I expect him to play 29, 30 minutes here. Since last season in those 435 minutes alongside Lillard without McCollum, 29.9% usage rate, 20.1% rebounding percentage, 12.8% assist percentage. So contributes across the board. He's actually been better this year than last year. So if anything, that probably underprojects him. But at 7,300 on DraftKings, it puts him as one of the really good center options on this slate. I have Towns and Embiid as the 2 top guys. Looking at DraftKings pricing where they are clearly underpriced. But then you have that mid-range with Drummond, Gobert, Nurkic, Valanciunas, Cousins, all as, just very, very good plays where I expect my ownership will be spread out amongst them.
All right. The only other guys I'm kind of even going to consider, and this gets down to the 2-game night slate, In the main slate, I don't think I'm going to get to these guys, but Harkless, Layman, Seth Curry, Cantor. Wish it was a little more up-paced matchup, but those guys are going to get some minutes. They should see some production. And Cantor is one of those guys where he's not going to be able to stop Drummond, but Drummond's not going to be able to stop him. It just depends on how many minutes he's going to get. As you look down these tertiary and deeper plays, considering just the 2-game late slate, Adam, anybody else you want to mention from the Blazers here?
No.
All right. Finishing it up. Let's go to Detroit. We've got, let me get my filters here. We have nobody really popping here. Blake Griffin is at 17% on FanDuel. He is 8,300. We're projecting him for 37 fantasy points. Not overly stellar, but, could have a decent game. Andre Drummond, 9K on DraftKings, 11,000 on FanDuel. He's coming in at 2% on FanDuel and 11% on DK. I would only really consider him here on DK. I like him a lot in the late game as the main guy here coming from the Pistons. Talk to me here about the Motor City Madmen.
Andre Drummond on DraftKings is where I think it pretty much starts and ends. $9,000 is too cheap for him, regardless of matchup. He's averaging 1.45 DraftKings points per minute since the start of February. I have him projected for 1.37 in this particular matchup, which still at 9K, you're talking almost 50 fantasy points. So again, it's not that I'm prioritizing him heavily over guys like Nurkic or Cousins or Valanciunas or this entire mid-range of centers. It's that he is just very firmly in the conversation. So when I can't get to Towns or Embiid, he's one of the guys that, like, I have him essentially the same as Nurkic, Valanciunas, a little ahead of Cousins and Gobert.
All right, one thing to wrap up before we do a couple Thrive props here, Adam. It sounds like Noah and Conley are both going to play. Can you just give your brief take again on Joe Val now that looks like that is the particular scenario we would be facing?
I still have him at 28. I have him at 28 minutes still. Okay. I still think that he's underpriced. It's still a nice matchup against Minnesota. Assuming that he's not limited on the back-to-back or anything, I don't see any reason not to like him.
All right, we are going to drop this Thrive link in the chat. You guys know the drill. If you sign up via this link that I have put in the chat, and use the promo code AwesomoStrat, get it, strategy but shorter, so AwesomoStrat. Once you sign up, not even making a deposit, sign up, they'll give you $5 that are available for immediate use. Adam, I was up in Maryland a couple weeks ago, so I used that opportunity to sign up with Thrive and then forgot to enter a contest before I came back to Virginia, so I gotta wait till I leave Virginia to do this, but I did get my $5 for signing up, so we'll have to see. I got a little distracted, and by the time I was about to make the turn off the Beltway back into Virginia, I was like, damn it, I'm not turning around. My wife's in the car. I'm not turning around to try to challenge Adam for a $5 head here, but I am on board there. So we will see what happens. Remember, this is you get 20 questions. You pick 10 of them. It's props, prop wagering. The more likely an outcome, less points. The less likely an outcome, the more points you get. You can choose any 10 of those 20, and then that becomes your score. A lot of additional game theory in this. When you think about some things where players may shy away from, and if you like it, a little more than a normal outcome, go for it. Get your leverage that way. Adam, I would ask you how to construct a team with the appropriate props, but we've seen that's an issue, so we're going to have to leave that for Josh. But you are very he's paying me extra to give you the singers, even though he's not here. But you definitely have all your projections and such set up. So give us a couple here, demonstrate what we look for, and let me pull up. I've already got Josh's projections up, so I'll just go off Josh's projections. It'll be like he's here.
There you go. First one, Joel Embiid, 26.5 total points, 95 points for the over, 105 for the under.
We'll be taking the over because Josh currently has him at 27.5.
Yep, I got him at 28.8, so pretty easy.
How many minutes
over.
did you go? He's got him at 34, which we had mentioned. That's kind of the reasonable projection, assuming a game gets out of hand, etc. for these guys.
I have him at 35. I'm not assuming that game gets out of hand.
Okay.
Other side of the game, Trae Young, 8.5 total assists, 115 points for the over, 85 for the under.
We'll be taking the over. We have him at 9 assists in 33 minutes.
Yeah, I have him at 10.5 assists. So this would probably very easily be like the number one on the board for me since you're getting 115 points for the over. One of my favorite tournament plays, Derrick Favors against Chicago. 1.5 total blocks with 120 points for the over.
Josh has him at 1.4, and he's, I'll say a chalk donkey, but he's a slave to his projections. But for 120 points, I'm taking the over.
Yeah, he would take the over. And so would I, because I have him at 1.9.
Okay. You have a Luka Doncic one there, so we can settle the debate once and
yeah, 37.5 total points plus rebounds plus assists for Luka, even action.
All right, 37.5, you say. Josh, oops, that's Donovan Mitchell. Josh has him for 41.1. I'm thinking you're going to have him for what, 44.2 is my guess, Adam?
I have him at 39.3.
What? Josh likes him more than you?
How many minutes did Josh have him at?
Josh has him at 34 minutes.
Okay, I'm at 32 right now.
What happens if you put him at 34?
41.7.
Then you would like him more than Josh. All right, there we go. That settles that. Reminder, we got a bunch of good stuff here. You got live before lock with one Fast Eddie Fair taking you down the home stretch. That'll be, I'm just going to assume it's 5:45. We'll post that on Twitter just to make sure. We also have Adam coming out with the deep dive. That will be behind the paywall. And then we've got right now the Cash Game Building Blocks article written this morning by yours truly, along with the Good Chalk, Bad Chalk, Players to Play, and Fantasy Cruncher Tip of the Day. You can see that on the front page of Osmo. I just put that link there in the chat. Check that one out. Give you a nice little foundational baseline here. Adam, my cash game has improved dramatically since I've been playing this, and with a little game selection. I'm having more fun in the three-mans than anything. I just pick one where I don't recognize at least one of the gamers' names because there's all those guys that just sit in the lobby and wait for their games to get
or just pick the ones that have two of them because they all play like 1v1 and 2v2s off each other.
Do they really? Because I notice I usually win them all or lose them all, and I've been winning them all more often than not. Yeah,
I mean, this time of year, especially this time of year, like people playing cash games for the most part are good, and so they're playing they're playing very close to each other's lineups because they're playing optimal lineups. But when you're playing the 3, 5, 10-man contests, it makes it worth your while. Basically, it makes it so like you're kind of playing a head-to-head, but you're getting 2-to-1 odds.
And that's how I look at it as well. And I've talked with some of our cash gamers in the premium Slack chat and just because I was saying, and they're like, man, love the article. You're nailing the key plays. But then we're looking at some of the lineups I did, and they're like, yeah, you play it more like a 3-man or a 5-man because you're not going with what the chalk totally is. And I'm like, well, I'm putting this into single entry tournaments as well. But I've been getting, you get 2x pretty much in 3-mans. You don't get that in the other stuff, Adam. Come on, it's boring. 80% return? Boo. I need my upside. All right, with that, gamers, we're going to get on out of here. And not only am I going to stop recording, but I'm going to stop streaming this time. Unlike last weekend, where you guys almost got to see me come back with my leftover pizza lunch as I went to finish my article. But I'm not going to do that today. So enjoy, and we'll get this up on the podcast stream shortly. You can follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am at EmacDFS, and it is Osmo_COM on the Twitter machine. With that, gamers, good luck.